mean, okay. I'm coming, please. Are we good this way? This was working well yesterday.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Let's be patient for Simetin. Patient with him.
Hello. I'm guessing this can work now, right?
It works. You can go ahead.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to manage this because I don't understand. So today I'll be talking about something that we are in some sense very familiar with. Okay, so the first slide, I can't share it properly as a normal slide again, but I think we just go with that. So we have a login page, and then you can see some error be displayed, and I'm pretty sure we've encountered this before. So let's say we input the wrong password or the wrong username, then it throws an error and tells us username is incorrect or something like it's required when we try to submit a form, maybe a Google form. And then we skip some areas that are compulsory or that are required. So it tells us that we can't submit except we fulfill that particular area. And also we are also probably familiar with video games, and we play video games, especially those that have lifelines. Let's say you have 3 lifelines and then you keep playing until your lifelines drop to 0, then it tells you game over. So the game is not over at every interval until you do not have any life left. And basically what is happening is that the program we are using, whether the form that we are submitting or the game we are playing, is just basically following some set of instructions that have been written down by whoever wrote the software or the program, as the case may be. And then as long as certain parameters are fulfilled, it works. And if other parameters are not, something else will happen. So that's it. Like there are some conditions of, let me say, parameters that have been set down. And depending on what the user is doing with those parameters, then the program is going to respond accordingly. And so we'll be talking about control structures, basically. So control structures, basically, you can imagine control structure to be the brain or the logic behind any computer program or software, basically. So we're going to look at the introduction, the types of control structures, and then we're going to delve into them one after the other. We'll look at the sequential flow, the conditional flows, and what we call the repetitive flow, or we can say iterations. All right, so control structures can be thought to be, or can be thought as what is the building block of any computer program or software that we can see as a finished software, as a finished product, essentially. So you have certain elements that make up the overall, that makes up the software now, the program in the big picture. So you have certain element that comes together, and these are basically the control structure, because they basically determine what we go on in the computer, in the program as a whole. So they are the basic set of instructions or command that helps every program you do, no matter how simplified they are or how complex they may be, to make decision by following one part or the other. And these parts are not just arbitrary. So the control structure basically chooses and then analyzes the direction the computer program is going to go, given that certain parameters or conditions are met. So you have a program, you can do a whole lot of things, but you want it to do a specific thing. So once you fulfill certain parameters, then the program can go in that direction. For instance, you want to register or you want to log in. It depends on what you want to do. So depending on what aspect of the program you click, or depending on who you are. So if you're a guest, for instance, the program will just go in the direction of you registering. And if you're not a guest, it's going to go in the direction of you logging in as an existing user. So you being a guest is the parameter in this case, or the condition in this case, that will determine the place the program is going to go. All right, so let's look at the types. We have about 3 major groups of control structures. We have the sequential structure, or sequential flow, or sequential logic. We have what is called selection or conditional structures of flow. You also have the iteration logic or repetitive flow, which usually are commonly called loops, which we mostly come across in any program we use, by the way. So let's take it one after the other. So what do we mean by the sequential logic? So we know what a sequence is. So a sequence is more like a serialized form of a step-by-step form of program. So for you to get to a point B, you have to get to a point A. And for you to get to a point C, you have to get to a point B, like that. All right. So it means that there are various levels, various steps. And for you to move to the next steps, you have to fulfill some conditions in the previous step. So a typical example would be games that we play that have different levels, maybe from beginners to intermediate to difficulty. Most times when you're playing the games for the first time and you have like a number of levels, for instance, you can't jump to any level except to finish the previous level. So if you want to go to a level 2, you must have done level 1. And if you want to go to level 3, you must have done level 2. So that's more like a sequential logic. So except that maybe you've completed the entire levels in the game now, you can then jump, as the case may be. But before you can do that, you must first step by step go through some things before you can do other things. And this is basically the sequential logic. And this way you have it. So you have just a serialized form. So you have the first module. For you to get to the second module, you must have completed the first module. And then for you to get to the next module, let's say module C in this case, you must have finished up with module B, basically. And that's the sequential logic. Very simple, straightforward, one with directional, finish what complete certain parameters, then you go to the next parameter so that you can do that, basically. So now the next one, which is even more interesting than the one we just checked, is the conditional flow. And this is, I shared the login page earlier, where it's telling you that name is required and password is required, or sometimes where we input a name and a password, and then it tells us something like the name and password, there's a mismatch in the name and password, given that you've already registered before and then you've inputted some name and some password. So if you put in the wrong password, let's say you're trying to unlock your phone, for instance, you put in the wrong code or the wrong fingerprint, it's not going to go. Why? Because it's mostly this is some conditional conditional statement that have been written. So, but interesting thing about conditional statement is that when you write a conditional statement, you want to check if a certain parameter is true. And if it is true, you run the program. That's all. And if it's false, some other things, if depending on what you have there. All right. So you have certain conditions or parameters that are written down, and should they be fulfilled or otherwise, depending on the way the condition is structured, then certain things happen. So we have about 3 general types of conditional statement. We have a single alternative, a double alternative, and then the multiple alternative. So the single alternative is a very simple if statement, which is something we're very familiar with. So you have an if statement, and then in parentheses you have a condition written there. So if this user is a guest, then take the user to the page, something like that. And that's why sometimes when you log into, or if user is joining from a device that is not logged in, take him to the login page, something like that. And that will happen. So, but that's a very simple thing, because if the user is not, if the condition is not fulfilled, nothing happens because you didn't write any other thing. What is there is just a simple condition. So the other one would be a double alternative, which is the common if else statement. So you have the first condition. If it is true, this should happen, else. That is, if this condition is not false, what happens is that the next condition you're going to write is going to be run by the program, basically. So if the name and password are the same, then it should log the person in, or if they're correct, it should log the person in. Else, if they are wrong, then it should tell the person that there's a name and password mismatch, basically. And that's it's just 2 conditions. So if any other thing happens that is not written in the condition, then nothing happens, basically, because you only have 2 conditions. And then you have that's for the double alternative. Then we have what is called the multiple alternative, in which you have multiple conditions. So usually it takes the form of if, else if, and then else statements, depending on the programming language anyway. So for PHP, for instance, you use if, then else if, and then you also use statement. For Python, I think you use if, elif, and then else, something like that. So that way you can actually write a lot of conditions that can be met for that particular program. So you can write as many as possible. So, and the program is going to check one after the other. Is condition A met? If it is met, whatever code is written for condition A is what will be run by the program. If it's that of B, it will be that. If it's that of C, if it is that of Z, it's going to be that. And if it's not written, if none of those are met at all, then the else statement is run, that's more like the default. Should every of the other ones is not met or they're violated, so the other one just run. But that's not if an else if statement is not the only multiple alternative. We also have another one called the switch and case statement, which is more like this if else an else if statement too, because you have a case and then you have a switch, then you have various cases, and you have various for each case. And if none of those are met, what you have is that we have a default code that is going to run basically. And this way a conditional statement look like. So you have a first condition, it's checked if it's true, then you run it once. If it's false, it goes to the next one. If that one is true, it runs it once. If it's false, it goes to the next one. If that one's true, it runs it once, and it goes on like that. And if none of those are true, it just runs the default code, basically. The one in the else statement or in the default statement, depending on the conditional statement you are using. And then the last we'll be checking is the iteration logic or repetitive flow, which is more interesting because the difference between this and the conditional statement is that you do not know the amount of times this code can run. So if the code is going to continue to run infinitely as long as the parameter is true. So this can work for many programs. Let's say games, for instance. So as long as you still have a life that is still greater or equals to 1, you still continue to play the game, except it drops to less than 1, then it's going to tell you game over because you don't have any life left, basically. So what we usually call repetitive statement are loops. So we have loop statement. So it's the automation of multi-step processes by organizing sequences of action and grouping the parts that needs to be repeated. So keep repeating it. So you check if the condition is true. If it is true, you repeat it for as long as possible, as long as the condition is true, except it becomes false at a point in time, depending. And then let's look at this. Let's look at just few examples of the loop statements. So we have the for loop statement. In the for loop statement, basically, in for loop statement, you know basically how many times this code is going to run. So you know how long it's going to get terminated, and then you write it. So as long as that condition is true for that number of time, it's going to run. And once that number of time is gone, that's the end of it. So it takes this form. You are going to initiate the counter, test the counter, then you're going to increment it to that point where you want it to stop. And then you don't reevaluate it. You just set it that, and that's all. And then you have the while loop. The while loop goes on infinitely as long as the condition is true, unless it becomes false at any point in time. So the while loop, once the condition is first evaluated, because you have to evaluate it first, and it's true, you run it. If it's false, you don't. The code stops. But if it's true, it keeps running infinitely. There's another form of while loop, which is the do while loop, where a condition is first of all run before being evaluated. So whether or not it's going to be false, it's going to run. So if it's now going to be false, it's going to mean that it's going to run just for the first time. After that, it's not going to run again at all. But if it's not true, after being on the first time, it's going to continue infinitely until it is run. That's the while loop and the do while loop statement, basically. But these are not the only while loop statement that we have. We have other ones like what we call the for each loop, which is mostly used for arrays. So when you have arrays, for instance, so let's say you go to a website where you have multiple checkboxes. So these are going to be stored as arrays, basically. And then for each statement is the best, it will be a very nice one to use there, because you can now save each of the selected items as a particular value, and then they are stored since that's supposed to be array, basically. And these are about the iteration or the loop statement. So conclusion, control structures can be considered as the logic of any program, which basically determines the direction of the program will flow based on certain parameters or certain conditions. And as long as those conditions are met, or they are true, or the parameters are true, the program is going to run. And if it's not true, other things that have been written will work. So like the game or the login page, the reason why it's telling us that it's required is because it has been programmed. So in the logic, that's what is basically there. So thank you very much. I don't know if there is any question.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sirs. Hello.
Good morning. Go ahead, I can hear you.
Good morning. Can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Semeton. From what you said, from your explanation and your presentation, if you are what you are saying, it's just like it affects every part of our life, including us women. Because I remember there's one book I remember, Children of the Matrix, by David Icke, talking about woman that we are wired by some kind of strange stuff that there's nothing, we are not in control of anything because we are programmed to function in a certain way. So it just opened my eye to it just reminded me about everything in life. So thank you.
Hello. Estimating, since no question is coming forth, you can evaluate your audience.
All right. So I want to know that I want to ask which of the statement types are used for collecting arrays. Let's say you are filling a form that have multiple checkboxes, for instance, and then you select them and then you submit them. So which statement is most likely going to be used in that case? I think anyone can answer.
Somebody can call somebody's name. You need to call name, please. If
okay, so who is Femi? Who is Femi?
Okay, yeah. If you can use for each or for.
Okay. All right, so you can use for each. Thank you very much. So for each is best use, and you can now see each of those items has a certain value, depending on the key and the value given to them, and then they are stored individually. Thank you very much, sir. So I think I will ask one more.
Good morning.
So if you want to have a program with multiple conditions. Okay, good morning.
Yes, sir. I was wondering if I could present now. I was having issues with my network, and because now I have to use my phone instead of my laptop.
Jide, please don't interrupt this.
Sorry.
Don't interrupt. Let Simete finish up, please.
No problem. It's fine.
Okay, so I will just ask just one last question, and then I think we're done. So if we are to write a program with multiple conditions that are to be met, like multiple conditions, which of the conditional statement are we going to use? Anyone can just quickly answer that. Which type?
You can use if or if else if also. Yeah. If else if.
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you so much. So we can use if, else if, and then else, and then we can also use the switch case statement to write that. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Have a good day. So Mr. Jacob, I think I'm done.
Smeti, please, I need clarification. What is the use case for the switch case and the if statement? Since both of them are for condition.
What do you say, sir?
The switch case, the use case rather, since both of them are used for condition. The use case for switch case if condition rather, and if else or if condition, since both of them are used to set conditions.
All right, okay. So I think for the if statement can really really used for, let's say, login page, for instance. So like if very simple login page, like if name, you're going to register the first step, and then you're going to put your name and the password you want to use, right? So then you say something like, if the name, if you want to log in now, in the login page, you want to use an if statement, like if the name registered equals to, or if the username registered equals to username register, and if the password inputted equals to the password inputted, then that should really go. So, but for switch statement, basically, well, I think I'm not really sure if there's a major distinction like that. That could be a very slight distinction, but I'm not really sure. Maybe someone can help me in this case. But for switch can come in form of you trying to try out maybe various predictions for a particular model, for instance. I'm not very sure. Yeah, and then you want to that maybe, okay, somebody's saying this chat section, multiple variables. Okay, thank you very much for that too.
Yes,
something like that.
Yes.
So we want to try. All right.
All right. Thank you, Smetin. Thank you, Smetin. Benjamin, thank you for your contribution.
I can stop.
Yes, you can stop your screen sharing. All right. Jide is Jide, are you ready?
Yeah, good morning. Okay, let me.
Jide,
can you hear me?
Which topic are you presenting on?
Business model adaptation for platforms.
Was your slide approved?
No, it wasn't yet.
Jide, you are wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So you will not be allowed anyway to present.
Okay, sir.
So
No problem.
endeavor to follow the due process.
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Thank you very much for showing up.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So please, if you are sending your slide for approval, don't forget to include your 2-paragraph summary. It's very, very important as well now. Based on the recent all-hands meeting and the meetings that concerned KD and the digital marketing that came afterwards, after that. So endeavor you send your 2-paragraph summary, why you send your slide, and also include a professional looking picture that will serve as an avatar for you. Am I clear with that?
Sorry, Jacob, a professional
Yes,
looking
sir.
what?
A professional looking picture that will be used
Along with, you said?
along with your slide, possibly, and 2-paragraph summary, so that they can take the picture and do a design for you based on that. So that is that. I hope I am clear.
Yes, sir.
Hope you understand me.
Yeah, we're here. I guess.
All right. So you have been the organization wants to brand you further than has been done before.
The network is.
Now, in addition, the additional reason why you have to prepare your social media video is to endeavor you to be more prepared, because that may take you a number of time to present. So you'll be better prepared. And if there's any correction on your slide while you are preparing your video, you'll be able to identify it and make that correction on the slide, whether grammatical or misspelling or whatever.
Jacob. Hello, Jacob.
So that as you present in the organization, Mubarak, allow me to finish.
Jacob.
So that, excuse me, Mubarak, let me finish with the announcement, then I'll hear you. And so when you are done with your social media video, some of the corrections that you would have made, you will spot it out at that level. You make those corrections and put it in order. Then when you are presenting on your presentation date, everything will be perfect. So you preparing your social media video is like it's like a practicing your slide and getting everything ready so that you will present without itch on your presentation date. So that's just a few announcements. So Mubarak.
What I'm saying is like the video. I told you I struggle. Like I don't know. I try all my possible best
Mubarak.
to create that video.
Mubarak. Mubarak. Mubarak.
Hello, I can hear you.
You keep on trying. Perfection is not attained there. So you keep on trying.
What I'm telling you is, but I tried all my possible. I didn't you see.
I have heard you now. Mubarak, I've heard you.
I even, do you know what I even did? I did that video screenshot now. That video screenshot. So when I did that, I now did the presentation. So when I check this thing, it's almost 400 MB for me to. I was like, how will I even use it? Because this, I try my best. Seriously, I even still have the public affiliate award, but I don't know how to.
Mubarak, if you have such issue, if it is big in size, you let us know beforehand. That's why I have to tell you to do it 1 week before this, so that
I'm trying to reach you. I have
we'll give you a solution
severally. I have tried to reach you. I don't even know how many times I tried to reach you.
It's okay, Mubarak. It's okay. The kid is going to an end today. Thank you, everybody, for attending.